I'd like to talk to you about the magnificence of the concept of Agni in Ayurveda, which is our digestive fire, metabolic fire, inner fire. Agni is a pivotal, very foundational aspect of our holistic health according to Ayurveda, and in different terminology according to other very holistic earth-based medicines. Agni is our digestive fire, and as the name says, and you might suspect, that is basically the fire in our stomach that is responsible for digesting the foods we eat, absorb the nutrients properly, and therefore nourish our blood, our lymph, which is then being pumped through the rest of our body, nourishing all the other tissues or dhatus of our body. In total, there are 7 dhatus, which you see in the dhatu video as well. So go back through that if you haven't watched it yet. And they are all sequential. So it all starts with our digestion and the state of our metabolic or digestive fire to absorb and take in those nutrients and do that sufficiently enough to nourish all the other dhatus via the first and second dhatu, rasa and rakta, our blood and our lymph, nourishing the others. But Agni, our digestive fire, is actually so much more than just a fire in our stomach that is digesting the food. Agni helps us to digest life itself. It helps us to make sense of all the impressions we are getting from life that we're taking in via our 5 senses. Agni is that inner force that is helping us to turn random shapes and colors we see into a context and into a thing that conveys valuable information to us that allows us to interact with and respond to the world. So it's not just the physical digestion of food, it's the digestion of what we experience and take in through our senses. It's the digestion of our emotions. And essentially, that is the basis of making up our state, physically, mentally, emotionally, and therefore our holistic health. So this is also the reason why our digestive health directly relates to our mental health or our mental and emotional state. A more kind of Western scientific reason for that too is that 70%, it's not Western, we acknowledge that in the East too, but more, Western lingo, 70% of our immune system is actually directly located around our gut, because this is the channel through which most, but not all, of the toxins are being digested and therefore taken up into the body. Which means that whenever we eat any food that's less than ideal for us, or those fake foods, or take substances that are simply not great and not nourishing, our immune system is being alerted right away through the villi. There are those little kind of like feelers of insects, those little things in our gut that will directly detect, there's a substance that doesn't feel right, signalizing it to the immune system, directly signalizing it to the brain, and the brain is then initiating the appropriate response in the body, kicking off the immune response with, whoa, we need to attack, protect, we need to produce those certain hormones to deal with what's been ingested right now. That's the one physical part of it. Another part is that the immune system around our gut is not only detecting any physical toxins entering through our food, but also mental and emotional toxins via tension being created in this area. So it doesn't matter which avenue the toxins that are impacting us are coming from, they will have the same effect on our body. So toxins can be, environmental toxins, including what they spray into the air and onto the fields and onto our foods that we then digest, like GMOs, pesticides, chemicals, and so forth. But it can also be mental, emotional, or energetic toxins, such as conflict, being in heated environments, experiencing frequently heated emotions, any toxicity in our relationships, in our work or home environment, you name it. Any unresolved and suppressed emotions, any unresolved trauma. All this will create toxicity in our channels and in our being. And the way it affects our immune system in the same way as my example of taking in the inappropriate food does, is that those toxins create essentially discomfort is in creating tension in our being. And you might perceive it as maybe just emotional tension or just mental tension. But really, that is enough to put our body, that's really, no matter how advanced we are mentally and what we're creating in this world, physically, we're still just a bioorganism like any other being on this physical planet. And no matter where our toxins are coming from in terms of stress and trauma, it will affect us in the same way in our physical body, in putting our body into fight and flight mode or our stress response. That is creating tension in the overall body. It's withdrawing the blood from the center of our body into our limbs, so we can start to run and either fight or flight or freeze, but get moving and survive. And the body doesn't distinguish where the toxins are coming from, be that mental, emotional, energetic, or through our food and so forth. Same response is triggered. And that tension, again, will lead to the fight and flight response, the whole chain of events kind of kicking off, and it will compromise our digestion, because while we're running from the tiger, it's freaking important to run and get away and survive, and not to digest at that time. Problem is that if we're experiencing chronic trauma, chronic stress, which is very common in the society we're living in these days, again, through whatever avenue that's coming through, be that through food or environmental or otherwise, that means that we constantly have tension on our digestive system, which means that through that tension, our digestion is not functioning optimally. So you might experience digestive symptoms like cramping, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and so forth, you name it. But it also leads to insufficient absorption of nutrients. Nutrients might just burn off or go straight through you and are not being absorbed, which leads to insufficient nourishment and an inability to grow healthy successive tissue that's making up the rest of our body, which then ultimately is compromising the quality and the ability of our muscles, of our bones, of our hormone system, which is imbalanced, of our nervous system, and of our reproductive system. And that also, given the nervous system and everything else, it's a chain reaction, is compromised through the lack of nutrients, through the tension and fight and flight response in the first place. This will impact our mental and emotional state and draw us down. And then we know how everything can have such a spiral effect, right? How when we're feeling mentally, emotionally low, we tend to make the wrong choices, like have addictive behavior, eat the wrong foods to comfort us, do emotional eating and so forth, and that will further compromise our physical state, which will further compromise our mental and emotional state, and so forth. So it's this vice versa vicious cycle once we're there, right? This is why the health and the state of our digestive system or our digestive fire, Agni, is so important. Also, a little add-on on everything I just mentioned, the digestive fire is also not just in our gut. There's a digestive fire, there's an Agni that is specific to each individual process. So as in each tissue layer, each dhatu that is being formed in our body has its own Agni that makes it possible to develop and nourish and build this healthy dhatu, this healthy layer. So Agni is what's behind digesting our thoughts, our sights, our what we feel, anything we take in through the senses. That's a different Agni than the Agni in our digestive tract, which is a different Agni to the one that's creating our reproductive system, and so forth and so forth. That's kind of like subcategories, like just how you have the animal species of a dog and then you have different breeds. It's the same with Agni, and then there's differently specialized Agnis in our body. But if we strengthen the overall state of our Agni, that will strengthen all these little subcategories of Agni and optimize our holistic well-being, empowerment, contentment, cognitive functioning, and the way we take in and respond to the world, and get us out of being a victim of the world and of the life we're living to life happening for us, and us knowing where we're going and being in touch with our inner wisdom, seeing it with clarity rather than looking through a stained window and only seeing so much through other patches. Now, our digestive fire can be impaired in different ways. our Agni is just like kindling a fire, like, a fire in your fireplace. You don't want to use super dry wood, super dry and light wood, because that's just going to create a massive fire that's going to go right up to the roof and burn off so quickly, and then it's done. You also don't want to use timber that's been laying in the rain for weeks, and that's not going to kindle at all, and it's just going to create smoke out your house and not actually warm you at all, and the fire's just not going to kick off, right? One extreme, the other extreme. What we want is the happy medium in between. Timber that's just dry enough but not too dry, that's just light enough but not too light so that it's burning quickly, but it should burn hot and long, right? In order to generate the right amount of heat and energy that we're expecting to get from stoking and creating that fire. Our digestive system works in the same way. So our Agni can be impaired in either being impacted by Vata dosha, and ether, which makes it very light and irregular and mobile. So if you experience any irregularity symptoms in your digestion, be that cramping, bloating, sometimes your elimination is more on the hard and the constipation end, and sometimes it's more on the loose, on the diarrhea end, or somewhere kind of, on that scale, but kind of from left to right, from constipation to diarrhea. That's irregularity. If you sometimes get really crampy, or sometimes you digest super quick, and sometimes you feel like your food is sitting in your stomach forever, that's irregularity. That is a weak, irregular digestive fire, Vishma Agni, impacted by Vata dosha. And digestive fire impacted by Pitta dosha is Tikshna Agni. Tikshna to me already sounds kind of sharp. And that's exactly what it is. That's a digestive fire that is too hot and too sharp. It's like throwing this really light, super dry timber onto your fire and just blowing off, and then it's done. And that happens so quick that it can't actually, or rather trying to light a fire with just paper or just hay instead of having proper timber. And that creates a huge, quick, super sharp and hot flame, but it doesn't generate sustainable lasting heat. Same when our digestive fire is impacted by Pitta dosha, Tikshna Agni. Your digestive fire is too hot and too sharp, and your transit time of food going in and coming out is so quick that you can't digest or take up nutrients for that reason. They're just getting burned off. Whereas Vata dosha, the Vishma Agni that I explained before, that also leads to a lack of nutrient absorption, but that is due to the irregularity and the dry quality of Vata. It's drying your digestive fire out too much, and it's not having enough digestive juices like bile and digestive enzymes that we need, and we need fair bit of amount of that kind of juiciness to get digestion going. Remember, it can't be too dry and not too damp either. So if it's impacted by Vata, it also leads to a lack of nutrient absorption, but for the reasons of being too dry and too irregular, no digestive juices. Whereas impacted by Pitta, Tikshna Agni, leads to malabsorption due to too sharp, hot and quick digestive fire. Okay, you can see how both of these lead to malabsorption and therefore to depletion of all your tissues, all your dhatus, and therefore your overall being and body. So we need to nourish it and strengthen that digestive fire. The third way Agni can be impaired is Manda Agni, impacted by Kapha. And that is when your digestive fire is slow, damp, and sluggish. And that is due to too much, damp, sluggish, heavy, and dense and moist quality in your body. Thick blood, eating a lot of heavy kind of foods, are following a very sluggish kind of lifestyle, or having a sluggish metabolism as a result of any of those. And a lot of other factors come into creating Manda Agni or any of those impairments. But this is slow, sluggish, damp, very inefficient digestive fire that can also lead to indigestion and malabsorption of nutrients, but at the same time, it might still lead to the accumulation of bulk. So it's like you are building excess tissue and low quality, high quantity, low quality, like building a lot of fat tissue, but rather than it being a storehouse for the right nutrients and being firm to insulate your body and your muscles to keep a right body temperature and stuff. It's kind of low quality fat tissue that might be saggy, that might not really do its job properly. Same with any other tissues, reproductive tissue and so forth, which will lead to a sequence of reproductive, be that male or female, imbalances. Either of these impairments do. But you can see how Manda Agni impacted by Kapha dosha, earth and water, leads to excess, right? So we need to bring that down, strengthen and increase the efficiency of that body to reduce excess and increase quality. Whereas impacted by Vata and Pitta, as I mentioned, leads to depletion, so we need to nourish that more. So these are the 3 ways in which our digestive fire can be impacted. And we rebalance that by firstly determining what your unique prakriti, your true nature, is, then determining what your current state of balance or imbalance is, vikruti, and then we're checking in with what is your digestive fire, your metabolic type right now. What is your, what lifestyle is contributing to it? What dietary choices? What other stresses? What's impacting your mental and emotional state that is impacting your digestion and so forth? Really getting into the nitty-gritty of what is your unique situation encompassing everything that is impacting you right now. And based from that, we will come up with a treatment plan that will encompass lifestyle, diet, self-care, and herbal recommendations to really strengthen your Agni as the foundation of your holistic health, your digestive fire, and therefore amplify your state. And we will not do that overnight, but over time, which is another reason why consistency of care when working on your holistic well-being in whatever way, shape, or form, even if your focus and your goal is success or improving gut health or your mental state or whatever it is, they all come down to your holistic state of well-being. And nothing of value is being created overnight, especially if those issues or certain imbalances have been ongoing for a while. So you can learn more about what a consistency of care or a care plan involves in the video about it, which will be linked below. And if you would like to learn more of how we can work on rebalancing your Agni, how we can work to really tackle and kick your goals sustainably, holistically, and in the process ensure to make you your own guru and healer, to access your own innate wisdom and work hand in hand with your body and being in true nature instead of against it, then get in touch, we can have a chat, and we determine our best course of action from there.